What if the Walt Disney Company were about to lose one of its biggest, most profitable, and lucrative sources of advertising revenue? Well, that might just be what's about to happen with the NBA and its renewal for its sports broadcasting rights. And today, we have an industry expert and insider to tell us just how dire things could get.
Disney has a significant amount of capital, monetary and personnel, invested in the NBA. It is huge. I'm saying catastrophic in terms of not just the revenue that is going to be lost. It's going to be a layoff bloodbath.
Do not miss this one. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell. Share this sucker out on the social medias. And, of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show. Now, as we stated in the intro, the entire space in streaming, in linear broadcast, especially when it comes to sports, is changing. And it looks like right now, the next change is coming by way of the NBA. And it may also look like that the Walt Disney Company, and of course Warner Brothers involved as well, might be walking away from what they've held on to for the last, well, at least 9 years, the last time the contract was written. This is going to have major implications, not only for the Walt Disney Company, but for broadcast and streaming as well. And we saw stories like this that we covered on the Sunday show. Apple nearing $1 billion deal for streaming with FIFA, still in the running for NBA rights. And part of that is, of course, related to this story, where the NBA is likely to exit the negotiating window, which, as we record this, is Monday, April 22nd, Monday night. So by the time you're seeing this on Tuesday, the 23rd, there might be a little bit more news coming out. But Disney and Warner might be exiting this time around without any new rights deal. And this is a big, big issue here. Big issue for the Walt Disney Company, who, of course, has been leaning heavily on live sports broadcast to drive the majority of their ad revenue, which has been shrinking in the last few years under secular headwinds of cord cutting as people go from traditional linear broadcast to streaming. The good news is we've got somebody here tonight who is, well, let's just say he's a bit of an expert in this field, somebody who's been around this work for a great long time, going to share his insights tonight and where he thinks that Disney is going with this and what the implications may be. Please help us welcome KMG, also known as Kiss My Grits. What is up?
How's it going, Valiant? Long time no speak.
I know. It's good to have you back. Perfect story for you to chime in on, being somebody who is very familiar with advertising sales and sports and broadcasting. You know a thing or two about this with some experience here. And so tell us what's going on right now with this.
Well, I'm not surprised that the date has lapsed for Disney and Warner to kind of have that, sort of first right of refusal window to get a deal orchestrated. And I think there's a lot of things that kind of led up to this. Just number one, Adam Silver in the NBA. I mean, they're reading the tea leaves, and they know, just based on the public financial performances of, all the companies out there, if they're looking to get, north of $70 billion for a 10-year deal, Disney and Warner, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to come up with that kind of cash.
The last 9 years, it's been $2.7 billion per year for the last 9 years. We're talking about a significant increase. We're going from 25, 26 billion. And of course, that's not every single piece. A lot of these sports rights are sold. Here's the regular season. Here's the playoffs. Here's the championship game. We're now going to what the NBA is asking for. It seems like nearly 2.5, 3 times as much potentially.
Yep. And I think, and I think, what all the reason why the media and everybody is sort of, they're watching these negotiations very closely, more so than they have in the past, is, we're in an entirely new age of streaming. And this deal is going to set so many standards because everybody's going to wonder, what Adam Silver is going to do. How much exclusivity is he going to potentially give over to a streaming partner? And who is that streaming partner going to be? We know that the NBA, like they want to expand globally. I mean, they are a global brand, but they really want to have that footprint be everywhere besides, not just China.
Yeah.
So, when you look at all the other challengers that are referenced in this article that are coming to the table, and you recently referenced Apple, we know that Google is at the table. We know that Netflix is at the table.
Yes. Netflix is making a hard push, right? We saw they come up with this Mike Tyson fight that they're jumping into. Apple, on this other slide we had up a minute ago, they're buying a big deal with FIFA. And I realize that professional soccer is not big here in the U.S. It is big everywhere outside of the U.S., to be fair, because we want to cover the business side of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, and this is what this is all about.
Yep.
FIFA was hoping to get $4 billion for the worldwide television rights for the tournament, but it seems like that number is coming in south of that. We don't know how much south of that it is, but Apple was definitely a big player for this. We don't have any confirmation. You can see this is just from Monday, April 22nd at around, call it 10, 11, 12 Eastern, 12:30 Eastern time, thereabout. So this is still fresh, but Apple could very well be in the running for some of this NBA contract. They're talking about Amazon. And look, Amazon, I talked about this on the Sunday show, big player right now because Amazon has they have the proof on their side, especially with the NFL Thursday Night Football. They have been experimenting with this the last few years. We just had a full season of NFL where the Thursday night games, I think there was 14 of them that were broadcast exclusively on Amazon, with, of course, the exception of if you happen to be in the home media market of the teams that were playing, you probably had a local broadcast for it. But, so they can show proof of concept that, hey, we here at Amazon can do this. And we've also got, and this is the key, we've got the capital. We can stroke a check for this on another 9 or maybe 10-year commitment.
That's a key point, Valiant. Google, Amazon, Apple, they could write a check for cash right now for $70 billion. No sweating it. Yeah. And of course, I mean, it's not all due for the folks out there watching. That's not all due up front. No.
It's due over time. But the issue is that unlike Disney, who is in financially far more dire straits, let's be honest, and Warner Brothers too, to be fair. And look, everybody knew this. I mean, this is why you bring a guy like Zaslav in. He's a turnaround CEO. Everybody knew it was going to take Warner Brothers several years to correct a lot of the financial damage that was inside that company.
Yeah.
This is coming in an inopportune time for both, but a very opportune time for, like you said, the people out there that have the easy cash flows to make this happen. And the NBA, to my eyes, seems like they really want to have a quote-unquote, according to this article and all the reports, they want a global partner with streaming specifically in mind.
Yes. And I think, one other key player that we haven't mentioned that's a challenger is NBC.
Yes, Comcast is in there too. Right there. The NBA is likely to add a streaming component for its next deal. Amazon and NBC, Comcast Universal are considered possible new partners.
Yep. And you know, you and I, you know, we grew up with the NBA on NBC. I can still hear that jingle. I mean, that, you know, the
Michael
the
Jordan,
era,
baby.
oh yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, NBC is going to make a huge play at the negotiating table, because for them to be able to get the rights back that they had for, I mean, it was like 20 or 30 years. I mean, that, you know, and not to mention, I'm just thinking of all the marketing that they could do to, you know, sort of like splice together the footage of the, you know, the old school, like classic NBA with Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, you know, Magic Johnson, what we all grew up with, and kind of, you know, merging that together with the stars of today. I mean, that there's just endless possibilities for them. But I think, you know, the reason why there has been no deal come to the table for Disney and Warner prior to the, you know, the first right of refusal date expiring is, if I'm Adam Silver, he's got the upper hand here. He knows that he's going to be able to get the money that he wants. And to be perfectly honest, he might even get more than what he wants, you know, due to all the streaming partners that are at the table. And, you know, when you're talking about wanting to expand the coverage of his league globally, think about a partner like Netflix. Not only could Netflix offer him, you know, full global distribution of live games, but guess what else Netflix can come to the table with? Be like, hey, Adam, you ever seen this series that we've produced over here called Quarterback? What if we were to produce a series called Point Guard? You know, like, what if we could give you exclusive, you know, NBA original series, you know, on Netflix? Like, I mean, those are things that, I mean, he's, you know, I'm sure, I mean, who knows if Netflix is bringing that to the table, but I mean, Apple or, you know, Google or, you know, Amazon, they certainly could.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's so many things that, you know, could be brought to the table that Disney and Warner, while yes, Disney and Warner could bring the same thing, but they just don't have the financial leverage at this point.
They don't. And, you know, it brings up an interesting aspect that I posited in the last couple of months, maybe. And I said, with all of the all of the machinations going on right now with streaming versus traditional linear broadcast, the secular headwinds, everything changing, I envisioned at some point that we could see, getting back to the Disney aspect of this, that ESPN, if they're smart, in my opinion, they don't have the capital to acquire these rights on their own, clearly. I mean, they've been split between, in this case, the last 9 years between them and Warner. The number of games, we're talking about 80 some odd regular games per team per season, not including all the extras, right? But just 80 games in a regular season. Amazon, Google, Netflix, they're all getting into the game. I think if ESPN was smart, if they can't get the ad revenue, the one thing that they are unequivocally the cream of the crop of, especially from name brand recognition and marketing, is being a turnkey operation for production. Say, hey, we might not be able to keep all the NBA games, but guess what? Hey, Amazon, hey, Netflix, hey, Google, we can produce the live broadcasts for you, you know, with our sportscasters that everybody knows, with the ESPN brand name on your streaming service. I thought about that as, why wouldn't Disney look at something like that?
And that's, I mean, that's the leverage that both Disney and Warner have. You know, they have the production. I mean, they've basically got the infrastructure in place, and they also have the talent that, you know, everybody has come to be, you know, that they know is synonymous with, you know, ESPN or you know, TNT or TBS anchor desk. So, you know, this is, I am so intrigued to see how this is going to play out, because I can tell you, I can just tell you right now, if ESPN, because I really can't speak to Warner, but I'm sure it's probably going to be just as bad over there.
Yeah.
If ESPN loses even a fraction of the current rights that they have now,
And potentially, to be clear, Grits, a fraction, yes, but we could be potentially talking about a significant portion. Yes. So, what are the ramifications of this to Disney? And then, of course, by extension, I think what this could look like to Warner. But let's talk about Disney.
So Disney has a significant amount of capital, monetary and personnel, invested in the NBA. It is huge. I'm just going to make this up. Let's say at the end of all these negotiations, Disney is only able to retain the playoffs. That's all they get.
And which could happen.
Could happen. I mean, this is a very real possibility here.
The NBA is getting aggressive with these big tech companies. Yeah. I think this is a very real possibility.
Yeah, ESPN could literally be left with just the playoffs, and not even all the playoffs, maybe just a few games scattered here or there. But they could very well say, okay, ESPN, you get the East, Turner, Warner, you get the West. But back to what I was saying earlier, this is going to be catastrophic for ESPN. I mean, and I'm saying catastrophic in terms of not just the revenue that is going to be lost. It's going to be a layoff bloodbath if they lose the NBA rights.
You were talking to me about this earlier. Tell us what you think that could look like under it seems like more likely as the hours go on, what that could look like for Disney.
I mean, I don't want to speculate on numbers, how many people, but I'm just going to say that, you got to climb into the three figures here, maybe four.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that, if a lot of the traditional Disney advertising sales, DAS, is tied to, like you and I have talked about before, a lot of that's tied to live sports broadcast, because that is the bread and butter for the Walt Disney Company, at least insofar as their traditional linear broadcast. And I'll bring up a point that I talked about, I think, yesterday on my live show, and then a little earlier this evening as we record this over on our friends at Film Threat when we were talking about some other Disney aspects. Grits, back in 2018, 2019, the overall operating income for the Walt Disney Company was 39% coming from parks and resorts and experiences, that whole division, which includes cruise ships and other things. Do you know what that figure is today?
I think, I think I read that somewhere. It's like over 50% now.
Oh, over 60.
Oh, wow.
It's over 60%. And Grits, you can probably take a guess at why that has changed. I mean, the park revenues have increased with inflationary pressures, but at the same time, what has Disney been shedding like fur on an Alaskan husky in southern Louisiana in the summer?
Yeah. It's the networks. It's the
cable subscribers. Subscribers.
I don't know if you follow Clay Travis. I mean, he does a phenomenal job of covering this, but in terms of talking about how many cable subscribers they're losing year after year,
that's terrible.
I think in the past 10 years, they've lost half of what they used to have.
Well, I'll put it this way. I know about 10 years, I've got to look at the exact year comparison here, but I think about 10 years ago, we had roughly 100 million homes or whatever, cable subscribers in North America, and today it's fallen under 70 million. That data might be a year or two old. So we might be approaching a 40% loss at this point. And as I keep reminding folks, you well know, roughly $10 of each of those households paying a cable bill, roughly $10 of that cable bill that we all paid went right to Disney.
Yeah, and the majority of it went right to ESPN.
That's it. And that's dwindling. So even though, people talk about the NBA's declining viewership, that's really not the issue. It's still a cash machine in advertising. Like,
oh, absolutely.
is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, even though the NBA ratings are in the toilet, I mean, you know, an average women's basketball game is now getting higher ratings than an NBA game. So,
Is it really?
yes,
Wow. Okay.
like
Well, I saw the NCAA playoffs. I saw the 12
yeah,
million that were watching Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese face off with Iowa LSU, which was a staggering number.
this wasn't even the tournament. A regular season women's basketball game between, I believe it was South Carolina and LSU,
Mm-hmm.
had 1.8 million viewers, and the primetime NBA game that night on ESPN had 1.5.
Good God.
So so you know, like, I mean, so yeah, the NBA product is definitely not as valuable as it used to be, and I mean,
But
all
not
the
in this,
reasons.
but in
Yeah.
the States. But it seems like the NBA knows well enough if they go streaming, if they go global, they seem to
Right.
feel like, oh, we can make this up in droves.
Well, and you know, I also going back to, you know, Adam Silver at the negotiating table. He is never going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, you know, I realize that, you know, my product is trash, you know, that it's not as good as it used to be." Adam Silver is going to turn around and point the finger at Disney and say, you know, you haven't been giving me favorable time slots or programming, which I
Ooh.
can tell you the relationship between ABC and the NBA has not been that great.
Ooh.
And
Did not know
programming,
that.
scheduling has been a big kind of issue between the two, because supposedly back in the day, in the heyday of the NBA, the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
with NBC, they were always getting a favorable, like 5:30, 6 o'clock, sort of like prime game
Yeah.
slot.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get that with ABC because of interference with America's funniest home videos. So it's sort of like, you know, it's like, okay, you know, you know, so that's why the ratings have they've declined, because they're just not getting that prime time slot. So, you know, so you look at NBC coming back to the table and saying, "Hey, we want to, you know, we want to rebuild the glory days,"
Yeah.
which Adam Silver were absolutely entertained. And then, you know, he's going to look at sort of like the way his product has diminished under Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we'll put a little asterisk next to Warner as well. But I mean, they've had a relationship with Warner going back 40 years. So I think if anybody's going to come out of the negotiating room with still a portion of what they had, but maybe not as much, it's going to be Warner over Disney.
Wow. Okay, so final question on this. If Disney loses, which it looks like it might happen, if Disney loses a significant portion that they've shared with this NBA contract for the last 9 years, what do you think the overall impacts are going to be to Disney and ESPN here?
Well, you know, it's perfect timing for this conversation because they are right in the middle of upfront negotiations. So yeah, so the upfront, and there's only 1 year left on the current rights deal.
Yep. 24-25 season. Yep.
Exactly. And so I think there's also, so that's sort of also an elephant in the room of why, you know, there hasn't been a deal signed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm NBC and the upfront presentation is in 3 weeks, what kind of splash could that be for them to make and say, hey, we're going to be the future broadcast partner of the NBA? Like, I mean, for them to make that announcement in 3 weeks, which they very well could.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, with the upfront negotiations going on right now, last year, Disney closed their upfronts. It was flat year over year, but they brought in roughly $9 billion.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of that revenue was strictly live sports.
That I'd believe.
And you take away the NBA from that, which covers, like we just said earlier, October through June.
That's got to get cut in half.
I mean, you know, if this ends up very bad for Disney. Somebody's going to be taking the fall, and it will be Jimmy Pitaro.
Yikes. Yeah, one of the heirs apparent, or at least as some people think, to the Bob Iger throne, which I think he's the one on the list that I least believe would fall into that.
He has no shot.
No, I don't think he does either. And one final thing on that whole issue, I look at this from a standpoint of, like I said, cash flows, revenues. That's the big thing. If Disney loses this big chunk of it, that's really problematic. I don't know how you climb out of that.
I mean, it's 10 years gone.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean, the CPMs that they're able, and the sponsorship revenue that they're able to get from the NBA it doesn't even compare. Well, I could say, like, the NBA, the revenue that they get from the NBA is so much more premium than what they could ever get through college sports, even college football. It's just the professional leagues have a much higher premium, even though the ratings are lower.
And you know what else is funny, Grits, is that if NBC actually pulls a significant portion of this contract, or at least one of the most lucrative parts of it, like, for example, the playoffs, things like that, what's going to be funny, talking about cash flows, is that Disney may have paid for it, since they just stroked an $8 billion check for the first down payment on Hulu to Comcast, and they still owe them billions more. Disney might have just signed the cash away for this.
And let's address the other elephant in the room, that Random Sports joint venture, the new streaming product.
I was thinking about that. How is that going to work now if two of the three partners just are about to lose their biggest contract, or one of their biggest contracts?
I mean, exactly. I mean, if they don't retain a significant portion of what they already have, well, the subscription value of that JV just went from $40 a month to maybe like $19.95.
Right. And that's the thing. I've said since the beginning, I've had my doubts about this announcement. Seriously, I think it was a trial balloon to see what certain federal regulators would react to. I still don't see this passing muster, but that's for another video, I guess.
What's hilarious about this is, you look over at Fox, which is part of that JV. I mean, they're just like, they're not coming to the table. They're just sitting out there, happy and content with their NFL and Big Ten packages. And, I know you and I have talked privately about this, but the whole joint venture, that was the absolute dumbest deal I have ever heard of.
Especially when Disney is trying to launch their own proprietary product. I can make no sense of this whatsoever. And they left out Paramount, CBS. They left out NBC. They left out half of the NFL in this deal, with, like, the NFC is going to be on this thing, but the AFC won't. I've talked about this a number of times. It is baffling. But
and you're going to have, you're going to have college basketball, but you're not going to have March Madness. I don't know if you saw the article that came out in Forbes where Lachlan Murdoch said that their subscription goals was 5 million subscribers over 5 years. I'm like, that's it?
That's it? Right. So you got to charge $50 to $60 a month for something like that.
At minimum. And then, if you're Adam Silver and, his executives at the negotiating table, okay, you've got this joint venture, and then ESPN is trying to launch their own streaming service. And if you're Adam Silver, you're just like, okay, well, how many subscribers are you planning to get? You currently don't have them yet. Mm-hmm. And how many of those are actually going to be unduplicated audiences that we're not already reaching?
That's it.
And by the way, ESPN Plus, which has been an absolute financial disaster, Disney, since its inception, has never once, not once, ever disclosed viewership data for ESPN Plus.
No.
Not a single live sporting event or original series, nobody knows how many people are watching that. They refuse to disclose it.
That's probably why they don't have a whole lot of advertisers on there.
Well, I mean, it's definitely well, yeah. I mean, when you're not willing to disclose that
it's
data,
limited, yeah.
like, well, for an advertiser, I mean, an advertiser, the first thing they're going to ask is, who's the audience?
Right.
And if you can't tell them, it's just like, just trust us.
Exactly.
We promise. I mean, like we'll get Peyton Manning to hold your product. I mean, it's so crazy. But yeah, and one last thing that obviously the news that just broke today with the Disney CTO resigning.
Yep.
His career at Disney started at ESPN. Like, he's been in sports ever since. And so, I'm not alleging anything, but I'm going to say it's very coincidental that with all of these streaming products, specifically relative to sports, that Disney is trying to get off the ground, and this guy just ups and quits.
A little bizarre.
And by the way, not only just quitting, I mean, saying that it's going to be, he says it's for personal reasons, but he's already got another job lined up at Penn Entertainment, which
I saw that.
Yeah.
It's for personal reasons, but I've already got another job, and I'll help you transition somebody new in for the next 2 months. Yeah. That's it. Or 1.5 months. Yeah. He wanted out.
Yeah. Like, it's not going to allege anything, but it's just highly coincidental. And I mean, you're right. I think that there's just so much internal strife and chaos going on. And I think that because I can tell you, when the JV was announced, it caused a lot of heads to be scratched internally. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense.
The whole thing doesn't make a lot of this is just very bizarre to me, but we'll probably find out more information, I'm sure, in the next few days.
They're predicting that these negotiations could draw out all the way till October. I don't think so. I think that, especially if one of these challengers wants to make a big splash in the next 3 weeks during upfronts.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But it's just going to be a very, very dark day at ESPN if they cannot retain a sizable portion of what they currently have, because there is so much invested internally at ESPN in the NBA product.
Ad sales, broadcasters, everything. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, and I know that we're like solely focused on NBA personnel, but that revenue is a domino effect. You lose the NBA revenue, then it's not just NBA personnel that are getting cut. I mean, there's going to be other people that are going to, be affected as well. And it's really sad, but I mean, it's the nature of the business.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Grits, I appreciate you sharing your insights. Appreciate you being here. And folks, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Hit the share button out there. Give us a little comment below before you check out the door today. Want to hear your thoughts on all of this as well. We'll keep you updated. Stay tuned right here. And until next time, take care. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.